what is Next.js? We first need to discuss the problems with React. So React is very useful, very cool framework. You saw how quickly we can make a bunch of pages, components, reuse the components in different files, a bunch of that stuff. But the problem is search engine optimization. So how Google search engine works is the Google sends its own servers to query a specific HTML page, and the first response it gets from a server, it's gonna take the content of that response, that HTML file, and see if there's some text useful there, some keywords it can index, so your web page can show in Google search results. Now the problem with React is that the response from the server, the initial response from the server is basically, I'm gonna show you, it's basically this, it's empty. If you remember, it's just this empty index HTML file with div ID root inside. So how React works is, this is the first thing the server returns as a response, and then React using JavaScript renders, basically generates all the HTML elements and inserts them into this ID root div. But that's only after the first response. Until then, the Google servers just flew away and that's it. So they consider your page empty, essentially, once they visit you. So again, this is at the moment. Hopefully, over time, Google crawler servers will become more intelligent, so they can also index these React apps as well, same as they would like normal HTML page. Like they would wait a bit for this to get rendered, and then yeah, but that's currently the issue with React apps. So React is very useful for like private dashboard, something you don't want search engines to index, something you don't care if it's in the Google search results, because it's a private app. You need a login with a password and email to log into the dashboard, do some stuff in it, and so on. So those private apps don't need to be search engine optimizable. But apps like a marketplace, where you have a bunch of products, or a blog post, or a blog site where you have a bunch of blog posts, you want those to be indexable. So as much as people are reading them and visiting your website, Google can index them and so on. So what does Next.js do that React doesn't? So what Next.js does, it's also a framework for building front-end apps with a little bit of a difference. So Next.js, before sending the first response, as soon as you go to the website, so it doesn't send in empty index HTML and then renders React HTML into the HTML page itself. Next.js server pre-renders all the React code on the server and generates out of that React, generates all the HTML code, inserts it into index.html page, and then returns that as a first response. So first response that those Google crawler servers and any user sees, it's a already fully generated HTML page, ready to be viewed. So nothing gets rendered after you get the first initial response. No, you get the first initial response exactly full, already pre-rendered HTML page. So that's a huge difference. But coding Next.js is much more cumbersome and annoying than in React. In React, you can have those with, you remember the switch and routes. You can conditionally like nest which pages you want to, which components you want rendered inside your HTML, your JSX basically. Do you want a home page, about page, depending on a URL, and so you can basically deeply nest that logic, conditional logic, which components to conditionally load based on the URL. You cannot do that in Next.js. In Next.js, it's basically like HTML. If you want, the root file is index.html. If you want to have a /about page, you need to put it in about.html file. So basically every page is a separate file. And I can show you this in a quick example here, and we are going to very quickly do this. So in a folder, pages folder, index.js is basically your home page. And if we want a like additional about page, it has to be a about.js page, and so on. So each page is an individual file, which is very cumbersome and not so useful when you're building like a huge web apps that have a lot of functionality like dashboards. That's why you use React for building very complicated private apps that don't need search engine optimization. And we have to use Next.js as a framework if our project has to be search engine optimizable, but we still want to use React in our project. So that's the cavity that we have to go with for now until search engines get a bit more smart and they can also search engine optimize React apps as well in maybe a few years. I don't know how long, but until then we have to use for this specific use case Next.js to build our React apps. So it's still React, it's still React code, just the way it's handled in the background it's a bit different. And a bit different how we create our apps. So same as we created a React app, we can also say npm create next app, and we are gonna store it in a my app folder. I think this is how it's done. Yeah, it is. So here we are gonna run this command to generate our Next.js app. Basically a boilerplate, a starting point for our Next.js app, and it's done. And it basically we can. So if you go to my app folder, you see all these things: pages, public, styles, blah blah blah. In package.json, we see we have a few commands: dev, build, and start. So we are interested in the dev command. So we'll say npm run dev. Nope, I have to enter my app first. So it's cd my app. So I have to enter my app folder, and I can say npm run dev. And it's basically gonna start our Next.js app. And it says started on a server, basically localhost 3000, same as our React app. So if I go localhost 3000, I'm gonna see our Next.js app. And it takes a second to compile, compiled successfully, there you go. This is our Next.js app, and basically similar to React, it has this main div in which it renders all the React and basically all the React content for our page. Basically very similar to, this is React in the background, but the way it handles all of these things, it's a bit different than React. A bunch of stuff we already mentioned. I'm just gonna explain you how the routing works in Next.js. So we have underscore app.js. This is the logic. It's like our main entrance to the app. You don't need to do much here necessarily. This is basically like app.js in React, just like a main component where all the logic happens, right? Where our app starts. This is like our main entrance to the app. And then every other page is basically, and you can always, what I encourage you to do in the text tutorial as well, you can visit Next.js website to see any more specific. So you can go to docs and you can see the pages, how they are handled. And they basically explain you. So if you want to have about page /about in the URL, you need in the pages folder, you have to make about.js. And it's that component, and any content in that component is going to generate about page. So here, if I go to pages and create about.js, and then basically thing you have to do is export default, same as we exported, for example, components in React.js, so we can import it in a different place. So we can say export default function about, just basically a React component, and we can return some whatever React, same as in React app, just for example say about. So here there you go, this is our about page. So mind you, the problem with this is because every page is a separate component, we cannot reuse the logic in the same way we do in React. So imagine we have a header, a main part, and a footer, right? So to have that, we have to both add a header, main, and footer in our home page, and then header, main, and footer in our about page. So those things we have to keep repeating because each component, each page is a separate file, and that's a bit more annoying compared to React. Because in React, if you remember, in React, if you remember, basically the routing is in app.js, we can have a switch route, we can have a switch, and then in switch, we can have a switch inside here. Here we can have some header, and then we have a main, and inside main we can have a switch. We then define the routes, so we can have a route with and we have, you can say, for the path slash about render component about, right? And then same thing for the, but just for the home page, you can do this. So all of this basically, and then we have a footer here. So the good thing about here, good thing about React, I mean the best thing about React here is that header, footer, we don't need to reuse this logic. We only wrote it here once in one place, and the pages, depending on the path, just switch within the main. It's either home page or about page and so on. So all of this logic never changes. We don't repeat it anywhere else. We just put it here once, and the logic here, which component to load depending on a path we are currently on, just with this switch and route is dynamically done for us. It's a one single file. We can have as many pages as we want inside of here. But again, in Next.js, we have some benefits with that search engine optimization, but this is how we handle routing. Anytime you want to create a specific page, it has to be a separate file. And again, same as before, you can say import React, and we can have use state, use effect from, we can import this from React, and then basically we can handle state within this component, same as we did before, right? Same as we did in our regular React app. So that all of that part basically doesn't change. The major changes is how we handle this routing. This is the major change in our Next.js app. Also, you can add some custom styles here inline if you want to, and so on. You can create CSS in a separate file and then add a bunch of classes, but I'm not gonna show you this right here because it's kind of not that important, because in a final project you will see how we add CSS directly inside these JavaScript component files. Much easier, much nicer, much more quality overview of your code. So we are gonna skip that part. You can add styles directly here in line if you want to. So basically, that's pretty much it for the Next.js. It's not much there to talk about. It's just different structure of files and folders than normal React. Here, basically, in the source folder, we have all our app.js, and in index.js, we attach it to the root. Basically, this is how our app gets attached to the DOM, to the basically the HTML page, and our main logic starts in the app.js, and different components we can import, place here, whatever. So the main difference is basically how this routing is handled, and all these files essentially are structured from React to an Next.js app. They are both front-end frameworks. They are just used for very different use cases at the moment. Again, once search engines become smarter, we can all use React, only React for all front-end apps and private dashboards and blog websites and marketplaces that need to be search engine optimized and so on. Task is pretty much the same as for React app, the task we had. So basically the pages you create /pages/index.js, that file is already there. Inside you can create a method to fetch all the blog posts using Axios library. In the use effects lifecycle method with the empty array, because it's only called once, you call that get post method to get all your posts. You save the response from the post you got in a use state, basically internal state of your component. And then once your state gets updated, so the posts variable in your state, then just loop through all the posts and insert it into your home page. That's basically to add some CSS to it and whatnot. So go ahead, basically do the same thing, just in a Next.js version of it. I'll wait.
One eternity later.
How was it? I can show you my solution. So basically, I enter task, solution folder. So basically what I've done, so in the task solution folder, so one thing is pages either can be the high level here, or you can put it inside of a source folder. So both of those are correct for Next.js app. And I add it to the source folder, and then pages inside that folder, and then there you have index.js and whatever, because I like it to be more consistent with our React app, which has source folder, then all the content of our app is inside the source folder. So that's a difference, just so you know. So in pages in index.js, what we have, get post method, async, we await for Axios get, we get all our posts, we set post, save it to our state, we call get post method in our use effects, get called only once. Once we get set post, when this is triggered, then we officially get our post saved here in this variable, and then we just render it with a post data map. And then for each post we create a div with the heading and post body and so on. So if you go now to the local host 3000, there you go, same as in our React app, pretty much, right? So the same thing, just for a different use case, a bit different way of writing our front-end app. There's a few more quirks here and there, different from React in Next.js, but once we come to that, or you have a question, you don't know how to deal with that, I'll easily help on the fly.